As we're getting closer to final projects, I do want people to think through, like, what would you like to build? Remember, this is the thing that you're showing off, the thing that you're going to be working on with other people for a while. And generally how this is going to work is think through the projects that you would like to build. On a particular day, we're all going to just pitch it. So I'm going to give each person about 2 to 3 minutes just to pitch as many ideas as they can. I'll take notes on everything. And then afterwards, we'll vote on XYZ project. And then whatever the top 1 or top 2 project ideas there are, we're going to be building that over the next couple of weeks. Now, obviously, when you first think of a project, you're like, oh, I didn't think it all the way through. That's the whole point. Like, no one starts a project thinking, I'm going to think of every possible thing, right? Look, when Jeff Bezos first started Amazon, his idea was not, I'm going to take over the entire world, but his was, I want to just create an online bookstore. That was a very, very simple way to get started. And then through the product managers and the project managers at A-Flight, they're going to be working with you to make sure that all of your stuff is, the idea is sufficient, and then you can flesh out the projects, and they'll talk through a concept called personas, which is essentially like who's going to be using your website. And like, this is going to be like there was one last cohort, which was a commuting app. It's like, so you wake up at 7:26, you got to get to work by 8 o'clock. What form of transportation do you take to get there right away? Like, you can go take a look at Lyft, you can go take a look at Uber, you can go take a look at Google Maps and driving and all that kind of stuff. But what if you had one place to do all of it? So that's the whole idea behind it. So they had like Late Lexi was one of their persona. Late Lexi is a person who, is a young millennial who then they created entire personas based off of that. Or they had Stingy Steve. Stingy Steve is a person who's using your website but only cares about value and doesn't want to pay a ton of money. These are some of the things that people have thought of in the past. So there are many different ideas just to kind of get your idea brain going. So there was a one called Competing Pets. You enter your pet into a contest and people vote on it, and you may enter it into a March Madness bracket later on. So it's kind of like, I upload pictures from this day to this day. People are going to vote cute, not cute, and then by the weekend we're going to have like a March Madness. Like, for these 2 hours, please vote on this particular pet or this particular pet. Whichever one wins goes down to another bracket, and you end up with the cutest pet that they have. Password protected diary to take notes and personalized color. This is a crud app. This did not win. How bumpy your road is. Name Rate My Roads. Local pickup only. Sometimes people want to buy things that are unique to a certain part of the world and that are not in other parts of the world. At the same time, there are other people in other parts of the world who can obtain those things and sell them or ship them to you, right? Like, I want to get this particular toy from this particular region of the world, so that person from that region is going to be like, oh, I've got that. Let me pick that up for you, local pickup, and then ship it to you for an additional fee. Community service, social media website focused on veterans, similar to Rally Point. Uber services for packages. You don't have a mailing address, so you ship it to this service, then they deliver it to you based on the GPS location of your phone. It's kind of cool. And I'll just share this with everybody. Another one I really like is the bathroom finder. No one has done this one yet. Google Maps API define non-residential buildings and say whether or not that person has a bathroom. You can add bathrooms and categorize it so you can review it. It's like, I really need to go. Like, I'm 4 miles away from home. I won't be able to make it, but I don't want to go. I don't want to go into like a Starbucks. Like, I heard the Harold Washington Library on the 4th floor is really nice, or something like that. No one has made this one yet.
I saw something like that when I was choosing my personal project.
That was an umbrella finder app. Oh, you mean just like regularly someone else built it, or a Code Platoon person built it?
Well, it's out there on the internet somewhere.
Oh, cool. Yeah, people have said this every single time, but no one has made it yet. Dog poop shaming app. Bathroom finder, there's another one. Workout that synthesizes food goals and logs activity and stuff like that. Commuter app, this one actually became a thing. Skill sharing, everyone is good at something and people want to learn things. If you want to teach someone, you get points and you spend those points to learn from somebody else. And then they thought through some of the users and tables and things like that. I will share this entire thing with everybody so you can kind of see the final videos and the projects that people actually decided to choose. So start thinking through that when you get a chance. I'll just keep I'll minimize this for now. So today we're going to create an ES6 application that displays who's in our class and where they consider their hometown to be. And the goal of today is really to learn the ins and outs of what goes inside of the Create React App script that we're going to be running tomorrow. So ES6 stands for ECMAScript 6. It was the largest thing that was released for JavaScript in the past probably half decade. And again, we're going to insert all of the stuff that we need in order to run Create React App tomorrow. Create React App tomorrow gives us a whole bunch of stuff. We're going to do it without that, just to see what the building blocks actually are. So I'm going to create a new folder called, let me change the color of this so people can see it better. I think it's, yep. Okay. I'm going to make something called No Create React App. I'm going to cd into No Create React App, and then open this up in Visual Studio Code. Where is my, there it is. All right, first things first, we're going to run through the initial setup of a new Node app. So I'm going to do npm init, and it's going to walk me through basically a setup wizard. So I'm going to keep most of the defaults here. I'm not actually going to change much. So I'm going to keep the name the same thing. I'm going to keep the version the same thing, keep the description empty, and I'm going to change the entry point. I'm going to change it from where it is right now under index.js to source index.js. Source src is going to be the home to all of our important files when we get to React. The test command, I'm going to just keep the same. Keep repository, I'm just going to keep empty for right now. No keywords, no author, no license. Is this okay? Yes, it is. And what you'll notice is that a package.json file came up. And this is basically like the manifest of what is everything involved with this particular React app. So right now, I've just got a name, No Create React App, the version's 1.0, there's no description. The entry point, the main entry point is going to be source index.js. There's some scripts. There's no author, there's no license. Like you could put all the stuff in here if you wanted to. It's like kind of like a manifest for your entire application, like all the names that you're going to need. So the main thing I want to point out here is this thing called scripts. And scripts are similar to Rails or rake commands. Remember we did Rails db migrate, Rails blah, blah, blah. Similarly here, we have scripts that we can create automatically. Like when I did Rails db create, it created a new database for me. Underneath the hood of that, there was a whole bunch of other code that was running, but all I had to write was Rails db create, and that created a new database for me. Similarly here, there are a bunch of scripts that we have. So one of them is called test. Right now, if I run npm run test, it's the same thing as doing Rails blah, 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 blah. So when I run npm test, everything blows up, but it's it echoes error no test specified. That's this thing right over here. If I just do poop, just to make sure that this works. When I run this, it blows up, but there is that poop right over there. And this is a script. This is something that I'm going to be running over and over again. But instead of writing this, copying and pasting this whole thing over here, I'm just going to run npm run and then this particular keyword. It's important to note that there are some commands that are protected and aliased. One of them includes npm test. It's the same thing as npm run test. Same thing with npm start. Same thing for npm run start. So if I run npm test, I will get that poop, and then this blows up and then exits. Changes back to error no test specified. Next, I'm going to create a source folder, and inside of there, I'm going to create something called index.js. I'm going to create a class called person, and on the right-hand side, I'm just for fun, I'm going to create a file that includes the Ruby equivalent. So this one I'm going to change to Ruby, just so we have it side by side. So I'm going to create a class called person. The class has a constructor, which is going to take a name and a hometown. I'm going to do this.name equals name, this.hometown equals hometown. The equivalent, class person, def initialize, name, hometown, at name equals name, at hometown equals hometown, and then our attr readers. Name, hometown. These two things are identical. You can kind of see it's like the main difference is, I see that hand, is the constructor is the same thing as initialize. I got name and hometown here. At name equals name, this.name equals name. And you don't have to worry about readers or writers or anything like that. JavaScript doesn't have that. You can override it and you can call it as much as you want. You just have to put this in the front of it. Michael.
And the reasoning for doing this in JavaScript is so that your processor handles it and not the server. Is that the idea behind it?
Well, it's just, this is, like, why would you not do everything in Ruby is the question?
Right.
Okay, so every language is good at different things. Ruby is really good for talking with backend code. Ruby and Rails is really good for small companies trying to get off the ground very, very quickly. It's very easy to write code and get it off the ground. It's really slow at the same time. JavaScript is much faster. So this is just two ways of skinning the same cat. It just depends on what you're trying to build. The idea,
John,
yes.
I think you need a getter or a setter if you're going to change those in the constructor.
I don't think so, but we can try. We'll try it a little bit later. I'm not. Maybe you're right. I don't know. I'm not really a JavaScript developer, but we'll see. But yeah. So what I was going back to a little bit earlier, we use JavaScript code and React code to basically take a lot of the load off the server and to create a better user experience. Imagine if every single link that you clicked on a particular web page had to go through an entire request and response cycle. That's where you get really, really slow stuff. But if you have other apps, like if I go to like Instagram, I don't use Instagram, but like if you go on to like Instagram or something like that, there is like Instagram is fast, right? It doesn't, because a lot of that stuff is already loaded inside of, like when you make the initial request, most of it is actually already, all the requests are already made. So it's like view more comments, they already have all the comments. Your browser is storing them. That's what React does for you, instead of making a request and response and waiting and waiting and waiting. So the idea is your browser can handle a lot of the load that your servers usually take care of. And I don't want it, like I don't want most of that to happen. So we're just doing two different languages, but this is just side by side. All right. So I've got a class called person, got a constructor, same thing as initialize, name and hometown. I'm going to create two methods. One's going to be called say hello. I'm going to just do return this.name from this.hometown. Make this a little bit smaller. Same thing over here. If I just do def say hello. Oh God. Two identical ways of saying the same thing. Like it's very, very similar. The last one, I'm going to have a render function. The render function, every single class has two things that are going to be built in when we get to React. One is called the constructor. It's all the things that you need in order to set up each individual instance of the class. And then the render, that's the thing that comes out to the screen at the very, very end. So I'm going to do const text equals this say hello. And document.body.inner HTML plus equals text. All right, let's create an array of everyone in the class. So we're going to do const students. We're going to create a giant list of objects. All right, let's go with every single person. I'm going to do Tristan. Where are you? Where would you consider your hometown, Tristan?
Phoenix.
Phoenix. Okay. John, where would you?
Chicago.
Chicago. Michael?
Same.
Okay. James?
Oklahoma City.
Josh?
Chicago.
I hate this automatic formatting thing. Sean, where would you consider yourself from? Either one, John or Jackie or Sean.
It's John. I'll go with Denver.
Denver. I was there over the weekend. Great place. Jackie?
Orange County.
And Sean.
LA.
All right. All right. So I've got a class called person, and I've got a whole bunch of students here, and I want to render out all of this stuff out to the screen. So how do I iterate over each one of these students in JavaScript, create a new person from that, and then let's just say hello out to the screen. We won't render anything. For each, okay. Tell me what to type.
Students.
Remember, this is JavaScript.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I would have to Google it.
You have to Google it. Anyone know off the top of their head, how do I iterate over a list, an array of objects? And then create new people from there. All right, it looks like we got
For in.
For in, okay. So I got for student in students. Is that correct? I'm going to create a new const student object. Oh wait, this is JavaScript. Student object equals new person student.name student.hometown. I'm just going to do student object.render. Dot say hello. So again, what I'm doing is I'm iterating over every single student, saving it as student. I'm creating a new student object where I'm initializing this particular class. Instead of doing, like in Ruby, we do person.new and then give them John from Watchung in New Jersey. This is the way that I would call it, and then I maybe like person equals that, and then person.say hello. So this is one way of doing it inside of Ruby. Very, very similar. I just moved the new to the front. New person with student.name, because each individual object has a name and a hometown, and then I'm just telling the student to say hello. So I'm just going to run this. I'll list out everything, cd into source, list out everything. And if I just run node index.js, something blows up for student in students. Did I mess something up? Oh, is it let? I don't know. Let's take a look.
Yeah, you have to put it in parentheses for, and then let student in students.
Okay. All right, let's take a look. Let's run this. It's not return. We did return by accident. Let's do a console log. All right, let's run that one more time. Undefined from undefined, undefined from undefined. So we blew up something. Might be that. Let's see if this does anything. Undefined from undefined. Any ideas? No, let's just enter a node session real quick.
Should it be students plural on the new person student?
I do not believe so. Something is blowing up royally. Any thoughts?
Are you sure? Like on line 30?
Line 30, did I mess something up?
Yeah, when you do new person, it says you name the constant student.
Oh, stupid. Yep, you're right. Nope. I named the constant let's student because I'm iterating over each individual one.
Okay.
I do not know.
Say hello function.
What's that?
I just want to see the say hello function.
This dot name
Yeah.
from this dot hometown. I do not know what the issue is. For the sake of argument, and because for the sake of argument, let's go back down over here and just create one person. I'm going to create something called const John equals new person John from New Jersey. And John.say hello. Let's see if this runs. John from New Jersey. So I created a constant called John. He's an instance of the person class, takes in a name, takes in a hometown right over here, and I'm just telling it to say hello, and the console logs this out to the screen. Finally, we have this render function over here. So this render function declares a constant variable called text, and that's equal to this dot say hello. Then I'm going to get the document's body and change that inner HTML to also include this particular bit of text. So in order to get this particular app off the ground, we need a server. So while create React app, which is that library that we're going to be using tomorrow, has a server built in for us since we're building stuff from scratch, we're going to go into the npm website. We're going to go to npmjs.org, which is similar to Ruby Gems. It's just a site that has a bunch of external libraries. And we're going to look for something that boots up an HTTP server. So I don't really know what it is. HTTP server. So it says, look, a 0 configuration from the command line server. So if I read through this right over here, it just says HTTP server is a 0 configuration command line server, powerful enough production, blah, blah, blah. So how do I install this? I can just do npm install HTTP server -g. This -g stands for global, which I would highly not recommend unless it's something that you would want to install across the board. So I'm just going to grab this here, jump back over, and I'm going to run that. npm install HTTP server --save. Now real quick, let's take a look inside of our package.json. Right now, there's nothing inside of it. npm, one thing that you need to know is that because npm holds so much stuff and all of the JavaScript code is going to show up, it takes a long time to install anything. That is one downside to npm. Your browser can handle most of the stuff, your browser being Google Chrome, can handle so much stuff, but it also takes, it's also like quite intensive. So if we jump back into package.json, you can kind of see down over here, there was not this extra thing called dependencies earlier. So again, your package.json is a manifest of your entire application. This is a package that I need to have. So instead of having a separate gem file with all of my stuff inside of it, all all of those gems or those libraries goes under dependencies inside of package.json. So I'm going to also go back here, and it says HTTP server, and then the path to the thing that I want to actually run. All right, so I can just do. I think it's a HTTP server source. What is it? Why is that not? Oh, okay. I'm going to run an extra one right here. At this point, I can run npm run start. Actually, no, because I'm outside of here. All right, so now I've got an npm run start. So I added a script called start, which basically is going to tell the HTTP server library to run the server using the source folder. You can kind of see it's available here on 127.0.1.80.80, so that's localhost 8080. It's also available as long as you're on the same network, the Wi-Fi network. Other people can visit these two particular links and be able to see my application running, which is pretty cool. That's one thing that I did that is not available inside of Rails. So if we just jump over, and we go to localhost 8080, index of blah, 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 nothing shows up. We need an HTML document. That makes perfect sense. So if you take a look inside of source, JS is all the functionality that's happening, but there's no HTML document. So I'm just going to create something called index.html, copy and paste the code that I have got over here. I've basically got HTML. It's an HTML document. Nothing goes inside the head for right now. I got a hello world, and then I'm loading in the script at this particular point. Same thing over here. Refresh, hello world. Where's John from MJ? Kill the server. Not sure where that is. Oh, whoops! I have to do john.render because I'm just returning it. I'm just console logging it. So if you take a look over here, inside the console, John from NJ is right over here. So I have to render it out to the screen. Refresh the page. Am I crazy? Undefined.
Just say hello, cancel logging it, not. No,
Oh, it's not returning.
yeah, it's not returning it. Say hello.
I see that. I just wanted to render out this text over here. Oh, you're right. I see what you mean. Good call. Refresh the page. Hello world. Refresh the page with hard refresh. John from NJ shows up right over here. So any questions on anything so far? I'm going to close this out real quick. So let's kind of recap what we've done so far. So again, we are trying to create React apps without running the create React app script, which we're going to do tomorrow. React is a front-end framework given out by Facebook. Then the idea behind it is your browser is so powerful that because like if your computer ever like if there's ever one program that uses a lot of battery on your phone or one program that ever uses a lot of battery on your computer, it's most likely going to be your browser. Because it's so powerful and uses so much power, it is also able to do so many things that a server could usually do. So instead of making requests back and forth and besides making requests back and forth, it will load everything in all at one time, and based on what you do, your browser will not necessarily make requests to the server. And the idea is there are, 4 billion people on the planet probably using the internet, and that's probably going to grow more and more. There's not enough money and there's not enough space in the world to actually manage all of that. So instead of having one central point of failure, which is the database, we're distributing all of that load onto your particular browsers on your particular machine. So we created a React app under source. Right now it's just, actually there's not even React yet. We created a class called person with a constructor, say hello, and a render. And I created one new person, John from New Jersey, and I told it to render out to the page. I created an HTML document called index.js, which just has one H1 that says hello world, and then loads in this particular script. This particular script says john.render, and that's why it shows up over here. And because this particular Node app does not include any server, I found one on npm.js called HTTP server. I installed it locally. If you take a look inside of here, you'll see it's a dependency down over here. This is the same thing as a gem file. So it lists out all the libraries that you're going to need. And then I created an extra script called start, which is basically telling it to run HTTP server from this particular entry point. Now what you'll notice is, and what's really annoying about Node, is that there's a Node modules folder that shows up. When I open this, it includes everything that HTTP server requires. So when I open this, there are 1,000, probably 20 or so different libraries that you're going to need. When I do npm install HTTP server, it reaches out to npm and installs all of the JavaScript code locally on my machine. So it's basically saying, it needs colors. I don't know what colors is when I go inside of here. All of this extra code is inside of there. So whenever I need colors, this code executes. And then when I need styles, this code executes. And this code executes. And this is just one of 20 libraries that are available. But it does install everything on your particular machine so that when people make subsequent requests, all of this is loaded into their browser, and their browser takes care of it rather than you making requests over and over. Okay. So next we're going to set up ESLint. We're going to kill the server. And we want to make sure that all the code that we write, all the JavaScript that we write is up to snuff. So we're going to run npm install ESLint -- save. Remember, gem install whatever, gem install Rubocop, gem install Rails, npm install ESLint -- save. If I take a look inside the package.json, there's nothing here right now. There's just HTTP server. This is going to reach out to everything and then install. There's a cute little comic. I'll look up while we're waiting. God, it's going to take forever. It's still installing. Again, it's one of those things where it's, instead of making the load onto the server over and over again, I'm installing everything possible into Node modules right over here. All right, so you can kind of see it just finished. Before I only had one dependency, which was HTTP server, and now I have another one called ESLint. It's it. I need anything above version 5.1. There's also a whole bunch of extra crap here that it just installed just for ESLint. So EC static is probably one of those packages that ESLint requires. Next, I'm just going to run this particular bit of code against my code base to check for errors. So I'm going to run node modules bin ESLint against source. It's going to read through everything. Oops, something went wrong. ESLint couldn't find a configuration file. Whoops, I skipped one step. So I'm going to initialize it. I'm going to answer some questions about my style. I'm going to be using ES 2015, which is ES6. I'm going to be, am I using ES6 modules? Yes. I'm going to be running it in the browser. Do I use common? No. Do I use JSX? Not yet. What types of indentation? I use spaces. What do I use for strings? I use single. I'm on Unix. Do I require semicolons? Sure. I'm going to do this in JSON. And then this ESLint RC JSON shows up. This includes all of the rules that you're going to need basically in order to set up ESLint. So when I go up to, and I'm going to just run it against source, I found 15 problems 15 errors and 0 warnings. There are some things that are missing, and we can just kind of go on them one by one. I won't go through every single one for the sake of time, but it says that there's an expected indentation of 4 spaces, but found 2 on line 2. So that's pretty simple, and it seems like there's a whole bunch of those as well. So, you know, I personally do 2 spaces. Other people prefer 4, so if I wanted to make everything pass, I'll just do 4 spaces for everything. These 2 need to go in some more, and so on and so forth. When I run it one more time, there are 5 problems and 0 warnings. And I just kind of go one by one until all of those things go away. But I don't want to run this particular command every single time I want to run a linter. So I'm just going to add that to my package.json scripts. So I'm just going to run, maybe I'll create a special thing called lint. I'm just going to do node modules, ESLint, //src. So instead of running this giant command every single time, I just run npm run lint. And then it goes against it, 4 problems, 0 errors, and things like that. 4 errors, 0 warnings, and it just says you're missing a bunch of semicolons. So if I add a bunch of semicolons onto this, we should be good to go. I think it's just here, here, here. I need a semicolon. I also need a semicolon here. Run it one more time. Perfect. No errors, no warnings. All right, so few last things before we release you into trying these out on your own. Since the person class is its own individual entity, because we're going to have single responsibility code every single place in every single language pretty much, I'm going to create a new file called person.js with a capital P. This indicates that it's going to be a class. I'm going to grab all of this code from here, get rid of everything, and dump it in here instead. So I've got the same thing, class person with a constructor, say hello, return, blah, blah, blah. And the render I've changed a little bit. Context equals this.say hello. I'm basically saying if this is being run from the command line, if this is not run from the command line, I'm going to just add it to the inner HTML, meaning that it's in the browser. Otherwise, I'm going to just console log it out to the screen. And at the very bottom here, this is the new thing, export default person. So remember when we were doing things a long time ago, we did require relative. You need to require relative basically every single thing. And at the very bottom of every page, at the bottom of every single class, if you want it to be exported to be able to be used in another file, you have to export default, and then the name of the class. Again, if you want to use class person outside of this particular file, you need to export it at the bottom, and then the place that you're going to be using it, you need to import a person from this file called person. Const John equals new person, John from New Jersey, and then John.say hello, John.render. All right, so let's run npm run start. Port 8080. Let's see if this works. All right, so our name goes away. Let's take a look if there's any errors inside the console. Okay, so there's uncaught syntax error, unexpected identifier. If you Google around, we're going to need to add another dependency called Babel. So I would have to go through again and just do npm install Babel, and then this would be able to forwards compile, because I think this is probably a little bit older than the browser can handle. And then it just kind of continues on. Finally, one last little bit, and I'll release you all. We're going to test our code using Mocha and Chai, which is similar to our spec. So for every single JavaScript file that we create, we also need to create a corresponding spec file. So I'm going to do index.test.js. We used to keep everything inside of spec folders. Now we're going to keep them right next to each other. So index.js, index.test.js. So this is basically what Mocha tests look like. So I'm going to import Mocha from Mocha, import chai from chai, import person from this particular file. So it looks like we need two libraries that are not installed inside of our app. So I'm going to kill the server, run npm install mocha --save, npm install chai --save. Back to the Q comic. This is how every single Node developer feels whenever you install packages. npm delivery, little guy shows up with the truck. Oh boy, it's here. One thing comes in and another thing come in, because that's pretty much what Node does. Okay, so finally, we got both things installed. You look inside of package.json, you can kind of see chai and mocha both show up here. These are extra dependencies that I'm going to need. If I run npm run test, blows up. It turns out that we have dependency issues again. We didn't set up the configurations from Mocha Chai. And at this point, you might be wondering why you would ever set up your own application if half the things weren't included. Because it's like I had to install Babel, I have to install Mocha, I have to install the server, I have to install ESLint. You don't need to do that as of tomorrow. But I wanted to go over each individual little portion so that you have an idea of just all the stuff that Create React App brings in for you. So I'm going to do, we have a few challenges for today. Let's take a look at what we've got. We have npm, ES6, ES6 dragons, and then Mocha. 4 challenges for today. These are probably going to be really fast for most people. So npm is basically just to make sure that you download and have npm and Node installed correctly. We already finished it. Yeah, we already finished it on the first one, so you can probably just skip release 1. We're going to run through the initial, create a new package.json using npm init, the same thing that I did over here. I'm going to add HTTP server, and then I want a page that says hello world, and create a start inside of package.json. So it's more or less what I already did today. ES6 is also the same thing. We're going to configure ESLint like we did in class, fix all the linting issues, and I have some old code inside of here. So if I go inside of app.js, I have some very, very old code inside of here. So I have a bunch of var, and like this is a class that has 2 things inside of it. I want to translate this from old school JavaScript into new school JavaScript using ESLint as your guide. Then I have ES6 dragon. Same thing over here. I have a bunch of classes. I want to test those classes. All the tests are already written, and we want to make sure that it goes from old school JavaScript into new school JavaScript. And then finally, we have Mocha, which is basically like, how do I run these particular tests? And this should be fairly self-explanatory. Any questions on anything? We're going to start real Create React App tomorrow.